Hello and welcome. I'm delighted that you're interested in investigating the subject of radiation-free building. The problem is that most houses have, because of their wiring and their exposure to cell phone towers, have an enormous amount of radiation exposure. And that's not good for us during the day, but especially at nighttime it's detrimental, as our all those subtle, careful processes that our bodies go through are affected by this radiation. Okay, so there's actually a three-level house. We've got the middle level here. There's actually a level underneath that with more bedrooms, master bedrooms on this level, and then there's a nice little area on the top that's actually encased in copper cladding. So beautiful location. And so we're involved with the people that of course own this property. We've shielded basically the externals. Used a combination of our T98 shielding paint and our GPA mesh to give an overall reduction to radio frequency radiation in the house. And when that cladding that shielding is applied on the inside of the walls, it also helps against the electric field exposure that we get from wiring that sits in the walls. There's this concept of electronic pollution, right? When we lived in caves, there was no man-made electricity, no wireless communication, none of that sort of energy. Since that time to where we are now, the amount of exposure that we get from man-made radiation is millions of times higher. If we can reduce what people are exposed to, then their health is not as burdened, and then their bodies can do what they can to recover. And in a residential setting, we've got enormous successes with that. We focus on people's bedrooms mostly, get that perfect, and it's wonderful. But of course, we have a lot of daytime exposure as well, and so that's where creating a building that doesn't burden health like every other building, but having a building that actually supports health, that's of course a concept that is very interesting. Normally you have appliances, they're called a point source, and so the magnetic fields of those drop off very quickly. If you have a line source, so it's cables, then magnetic fields can last much longer.
What is the comfortable reading?
Basically 100 nanoteslas on this machine, or 1 milligauss, is what you hopefully stay under, especially for a working environment. In a bedroom, you'd be looking at 0.3 or less as the ideal, because that's the place where you rest and regenerate. With the paint, there's a metal tape that gets applied to the paint, and then you put a little bit of the shielding paint back over the top, so it sits within the shielded paint. Do you want to have a little walk through the room? Just take a firm grip, just keep your phone out of the way. Okay, and just hold it, don't swing it around, you just gotta kind of keep it pointing in the same direction roughly. So these are 45, I mean those are nice readings, 37. We can shield against radio frequency radiation, but the shielding may be that effective that cell phones don't work inside. That's where your body fixes itself. And so in that wellness center, I mean, I would scream it off the tallest towers, listen, we don't just talk the talk. If you're interested in learning more about creating a healthier home from the ground up, then please visit radiationfreebuilding.com. Alright, so here we are standing at the street. We still, of course, have those local distribution lines running along this street. So standing right under it, we're looking at about 210 nanotesla, so that's about 2 milligauss. Not so bad, but let's see how that washes off now. We did this before the whole building was being put into place. Alright, so we've got about 180. 70, so it's 1.7 milligauss at this distance. Okay, and then at this distance we're looking at about 80 nanotesla, so 0.8 milligauss, which is about the same as I can remember, judging from where these trees are, when last time I was here about a year ago. When you told the architect and the builders, and of course the owners as well, to consider moving that house further than those trees to avoid this level of magnetic fields. Look at that, 18 nanoteslas. Right, and here we are inside 15 nanoteslas. 0.15 milligauss. So gorgeous, gorgeous low reading. Of course, the electricity hasn't been roughed in yet here, so of course when that gets turned on we might get a little bit of an elevation, but it's got all the beginnings of wonderful low levels of magnetic fields. Of course, being lucky to be able to have that distance between those street power lines. The fields on these power lines were a little bit bigger than you might see on other street power lines or local distribution lines, but anyway, we've got enough distance here, so levels are great. It just needs to cross it.
Just crossing?
Yeah, so
okay.
I put the panels over here. I just start with the tape from that corner. Here, continue on the panels over there, and just terminate it on the window. Alright, here we are back in New South Wales, Australia, visiting the building site again, where Strong Build, one of our partners, is working hard to get that absolutely gorgeous building finished. It looked so impressive last time I was there. So some time has passed now, so keen to see what it looks like now. The shielding is in place, shielding paint and so on, and the switches. The Nova fabric just isn't in place yet, so it's kind of an intermediate stage. We're interested to see what levels are, and we'll have to come back, of course, when it's completely finished. It's interesting that we're always getting more and more involved in more building projects. And I remember very well, a number of years ago when we were getting inquiries for homes, people always wanted us to come on site to take some measurements, and then based on those measurements we would decide what sort of shielding was to be implemented. What we can really notice now is that people get us involved and they realize that especially the radio frequency radiation only ever gets worse. And so they're building now, they're not building 3 years from now, so regardless of what the levels are, let's just get it in, let's just get it over and done with. And if it wasn't necessarily required now, then at least we're future-proofing the house for what no doubt will be coming. So yeah, that's an interesting development. Well, here we are. It doesn't disappoint. It's absolutely stunning in here. The woodwork looks so natural. Just had a chat with the painter. It's actually a very natural looking 2 coats of varnish on here, just to protect you from getting dirty and greasy fingers and all that sort of stuff. Okay, so here you approach the master bedroom. So the gorgeous look and feel to the room, of course. Stunning view. But of course, what I'm much interested in is the shielding. Now, because we have this natural look on the outside, of course we don't want to overpaint that. paint the back of the boards was going to be tricky as well. Well, not to paint them, but to ground them. And so what was decided on is to put an extra board behind these boards. That wasn't meant to be there initially, but it only has a few millimeters. And so here down the bottom, we can, for example, still see that these boards are behind there, and we've got the grounding tape running over it. You can see it's when you disturb it with your fingernail, and you get that little shininess, which is the graphite and the carbon. Okay, so here we are in the upstairs bedrooms, two of them. These two share a wall, which is a partition which can be opened and closed. It's very clever idea. Now we didn't actually shield the wall in the middle, because if we shield the walls of the two bedrooms that are next to each other, we're basically creating one larger Faraday's cage, aren't we? So this wall in the middle isn't shielded, but these walls, as you can see, are. So if I have a look at what sort of numbers we're getting here. Here I'm standing close to the window. Okay, something interesting I can show you here as well. We've got these horizontal boards in place here, they're shielded. We've got the tape running down the bottom. But because we've got separate panels, of course this panel also needs to be electrically connected to the other panel, so when it's all grounded it all connects. And so we've got the tape running here horizontally, and then here there's a T-intersection, and we've taken the tape up to cross that seam there and onto the other panel. So now these two panels stay electrically connected as well. Okay, well, that's the end of our little side visit for the time being. What the men and women tell me, they've got about 3 more months or so left to go. So it'll be interesting to see when it's all completed. Well, I'm here in Design Build in Melbourne, Australia, and yeah, very interesting. We have our booth here. We've met with much interest, which is great. Lots of people. Probably about half of the people go, listen, this is something I've heard about, I've got somebody who's sensitive. So yeah, very well received. Not sure if you are aware, but when a home is constructed and a concrete slab is put in, they use metal reinforcement to reinforce it. Now that is normally grounded to the electrical system, and that can cause some problems. If there's a stray current in the soil, which may not be there now, but it could be in there in 30 years, who knows, then this metal can become a problem because the metal is connected to the grounding of the house, the grounding is connected to the neutral of the house, and so the current can take this alternative path onto the neutral connection of the house, and that can cause a lot of magnetic fields in the resident's home. And so when we're building a house and we're going to use concrete, we don't want to use metal reinforcement. Okay, here we are at the building site here in Thailand. So we're going to take some measurements of what the radiation exposure is now and it'll be interesting to see what they are finished. Now, as per any city, there's of course mobile phone towers nearby, so you know they're going to be affecting this site as any other building site would be. So we're going to take some measurements to see what the radiation exposure is. These will be typical readings for homes and developments at similar sites. Now if I measure my body and just see what my body is absorbing, I'm getting a reading of about 5,200 microvolts. Can we see that? Okay. Okay, now of course that reading varies. Also varies if you're standing up or lying down. But of course it would secure a much better regenerative sleep if those readings were a lot lower. Okay, so if I move a lot closer to the window area, if I measure standing here, then of course we're going to get higher readings because more mobile phone towers have got an uninterrupted line of sight view with me, and so you know, you're typically going to get more exposure, especially with any sort of home that has a nice view of the town or city. For here, we've shielded walls, the ceiling, of course. We might do something with the floor as well. We'll have to work out all the details. Concrete has a bit of a dampening function in itself, but of course the glass is incredibly permeable. So yeah, as I retreat into the apartment, we still have higher readings, but near the window they're very high. Take you back in. I'll just position you over here. Okay, so again here, more of the 5,000 to 6,000 microvolts. In our industry, in our line of thinking, we would love to see that value under 100 for good regenerative, health supporting bedroom. It would be great if it was under 30, but under 100 we're already happy. So we'll see what happens. Okay, so the electricity isn't turned on yet, so a little hard to investigate that, but we'll do our normal measures against the electric field. And but it's very exciting to be, of course, part of this project, and it'll be interesting to see where this leads for the future. So we have another construction going on. Exciting to see it all get started. So the radio frequency radiation is already nice and low because we're more into the country. So of course we can't be sure what that's going to do in the future. And that's of course why we're still wanting to put shielding in place. Alright, so these bedrooms are going to be shielded with T98 shielding paint. Yeah, these are then the daytime areas. We're going to be putting the GPA mesh on the external walls. And we've had some discussions. The plan is that we're going to put that on the inside of the internal walls. Sorry, the inside of the external walls, so that normal cable can be used behind it. Welcome back. All right, here we are again. It's now a few months down the track, and we're now at the stage where GPA shielding mesh is, we can see it, it's been installed in a large part of the house. Let's go and have a look inside. Everything's coming nicely together. The craftsmanship is just fantastic. Okay, now this is of course a larger project, larger house, but these things are just as easily installed, even easier to install in a smaller construction, and of course the cost would be less. Talking about costs, it's a very, very small percentage of a build. You know, your roof will likely cost a lot more than your shielding, so of course you can argue about the fact you know, what your house is meant to do for you, what you expect of your four walls. With any home, you normally use normal electrical wiring, and this throws out an electric field, which, you know, doesn't help your environment. So an option would be to use shielded cable. Alright, so we got the GPA on most of the walls here. It's going to be nicely hidden away. Now we're working on a concrete slab, so the strapping that's going to be connected to ground is hidden nicely in the roof cavity, so the electrician can connect it to ground there, nice and out of sight. Shielded cable is rather thick, it doesn't bend very well. If you have to lead it through stud work, you're gonna have to drill holes, a lot of holes. You can't put them all next to each other because that would weaken the integrity of the stud work, right? So you would have to sort of have them all over the place. So now you see here, there's quite a lot of wiring, right? And so if you imagine if that was all shielded cable, which is really quite thick, then you know you're going to have to cut a lot more holes in that timber, and this is of course not going to do much for the structure of it. So the decision was made here that it would be easier to use GPA shielding mesh and basically wrap the inside walls of the rooms where we want to reduce this exposure. So what you'll see inside is that we have living spaces that have been covered with GPA mesh on the inside of the walls as a barrier for the wiring behind it, also some separate rooms, an office, those sorts of areas. So we're now going to have a look inside and show you what that all looks like.
Toilet, cleaned.
Okay, so here's a working space. Again, we see an enormous amount of wiring that has to be routed around the room. So again, shielded cable would have been a problem here. And so it's nice that we can just wrap the room with GPA mesh. So this wall obviously still needs to have it put on. Okay, nice overlapping. We need at least an inch. See, so here the application of the GPA mesh has been horizontal, which is easiest way to do. Of course, you have to remember to put your insulation behind it before you put it in. Again, here you see the enormous amount of wiring, and so you know that's already a bit of a struggle. So if that was shielded cable, that would have put a lot more holes and a lot more work installing it. Right, so all this is going to be nicely hidden away, and the electric field's not able to go into the space anymore because the GPA mesh, which is grounded by the strapping, is going to lead that away. Alright, so in this room also applied around the room, and nicely around the manhole covers and skylights. So we've got that strapping again, crossing each of the horizontal panels, and also going on over the panels that are on the roof. The bedrooms are going to be shielded separately, and for that we'll use T98 shielding paint because that does give you the highest performance when it comes to radio frequency radiation. So that approach there is a little different. If you are interested in learning more about radiation-free building to create a healthier home environment from the ground up, then please visit radiationfreebuilding.com. Okay, here we are at the edge of Lake Constance. Gorgeous view, gorgeous apartments. Now Giovanni's gotten involved with the fine-tuning of this design, so to speak. So the outside of all these, there's multiple buildings like this with apartments in it. The externals have all been shielded. Quite a large project. The entire project is, how much was it? 150 million euros?
Yeah, so it's 9 houses with 47 or 48 apartments. One apartment will cost 1.5 million euro.
Yeah.
And it's a 150 million project. And we have shielding materials in the first level project.
Yeah,
the
externals.
Yeah, it's about 1.2 million euro material.
We can see around the room that rather than going up and around the windows, we've chosen to run the grounding tape down the bottom and then just continue that on another wall. That's where you see that's grounded again to the power point. So got the grounding tape continuing around the room, going around obstacles. That's of course no problem. Follow us through the rest of the apartment. It is quite a job per apartment. This is then one of those bedrooms, so you can see ceiling shielded. Of course, a second coat of shielding paint will need to be applied as well. There was a little bit of electric field still left on some of the flooring, especially in the bedroom. So what we're going to be doing with this particular floor, we're going to apply the shielding mesh to the floor. The project manager mentioned to us that there's going to be a floating floor being put into. Anyway, perfect situation. So we're going to put the mesh underneath. Nobody will know. As you can see, there's room left for that cable to travel in that direction. So yeah, you have to be flexible with these sorts of things. So what we're going to do here, just spoke to the project manager, we're going to have some panels of GPA mesh put over the top of this area underneath the flooring. As you can see, massive project. Not unfamiliar to us, we do this regularly, but it's good to give you a bit of an insight in what goes on and what this looks like. We certainly also see a change. I mean, we've been doing this for 35 years, but we're getting more and more involved in the shielding of entire homes. We're involved with builders. We often, with existing homes, the sleeping area is always the most important because that's where we rest and regenerate. So it's often the bedrooms that are taken care of, but we're involved now with more homes being shielded completely. So not just the bedrooms are great, but the whole house is safe, so to speak. And we're also involved with developers who don't just want to make a pretty apartment to sell that suits the lifestyle, but they want these apartments to also be healthier, which is of course wonderful as a preventative measure, but also many of those are catching on that, hey, this is something people are interested in. And when I'm quoting, to do a job as a builder, I can say the same thing everybody does. I'm dependable, I do good work, I do quality. But let's say our builders go, yeah, and on top of that we can also make your home healthier. And people are listening, so they set themselves apart. This picture here is of 9 apartment buildings with 47 apartments in each building, and we're shielding all of them. A little bit closer to home for myself. I'm from Australia. This is in New Zealand, just across the water for us. This was a home that was being constructed. This had they were using hemp as a building material. It's called hempcrete as an alternative to concrete. Banner was put up. I mean, they investigated, radiation shielding, found us. And anyway, a little banner was put up in the street, which, the media caught on to that, and there was interviews and that sort of stuff. And when this prototype home was eventually, when it was ready and was being sold, the real estate agent commented that they've never had so much traffic on one particular listing in their offers as that one. Okay, welcome here in New Plymouth, New Zealand. We're blessed that we've been approached by Hemp Technologies Limited, who build very health-conscious homes to help them incorporate radiation shielding into their project. Now, behind us we've got a nice mobile phone tower. Of course, this one looks particularly daunting because it has that big metal frame. But when we look at the amount of transmitters that are hanging on it, of course we see those sorts of things around most suburbs all over the place anyway. And of course, that exposure to radiation only ever gets worse. So we've got the building here behind me. So we're going to take some measurements on site, see what the exposure is at present, and it'll be great to see when the whole project is finished what those levels inside will become once we're done. Okay, here we are inside the property. As you can see, they're just in the timber framing stage at this point. Now we'll go and have a look and see what that radiation exposure is inside at the moment. So this instrument measures in microvolts. It measures the body, its radiation exposure. It goes up to 2000 and it maxes out and shows a 1 on one side. So we'll see what happens. So we're basically creating one big box to have the entire home protected. Okay, here we are standing outside the property, right at the front door. So we're looking at about 5,500 microvolts. Let's have a look inside and see what we've got. Okay, dropping right down as we're entering into the shielded area. Got the master over there. Hang on a second. Just close the door behind me. Wow. 5,500 to this. That's awesome. Okay, so here we've got the mesh applied. We're going horizontally around the house, which makes for a nice, quick way of applying it. Now, mesh is normally grounded, especially when we use normal wiring, electrical wiring on the inside. Hello again, here we are back at the project here of the home being shielded and protected against radiation from internal sources as well as external sources. As we saw in previous videos, we have the mesh, shielding mesh has been applied to the external walls. We have the metal roof on the top, which will already give us some protection or good protection against radio frequency radiation, so that's always a bonus. But in the bedrooms it's most critical. That's where the body rests and regenerates. And so here we are shielding the bedrooms with the shielding paint, offering the highest level of protection there. And that also is somewhat future-proofing it. I mean, at this time 5G is being introduced here. We already had enough on our plate with 3G and 4G and everything else that came in front of it. But every 2 years they seem to come up with something new, don't they? So I'm sure there'll be a 6G down the track. And so, you know, we're building now, and now it's easy to implement it. The painters are here anyway, they're going to be painting anyway. So just a little bit extra effort, we can have those bedrooms shielded to the highest level that we can give this property. So, yeah, exciting. So let's have a look inside, see what's going on, and let you have a look. All right, let's go. Okay, welcome. Here we are. Wonderful house. But of course what's special is about what's being incorporated in it. To not just make it a house which is great for the lifestyle, but also for health. Okay, so let's have a look. We've got some doors that have already been prepped. So the brush has been used to work on the finer detail in the profile, and then the roller to do the rest of the door. You see the corner work being done with brush, and then the roller using the flat surfaces. Sometimes people ask, like with these vent holes, what do you do with those? Do you shield those? You have to put something over them. Well, as you can see, the foil from the heater duct that's above it, that's metal. So that will already also give some shielding protection. This is that shielded cable. So shielded cable is about 5 times more expensive than normal cable. The first step in relation to building a healthy house has got nothing to do with the house. It has to do with this, the dirt, the location. There are radiation types, magnetic fields, that can't be shielded against. And so if you've got magnetic fields from these local distribution lines running up and down the street, even we can't fix those. And so it's very important to avoid those at all costs. This was going to be far more over here, but because of the magnetic fields that were found, and they can fluctuate, they can increase over time, because that's to do with how much power is being used, the decision was made to shift this building over a little bit. Done. Okay, that's it. That brings us to the end of our little visit here on site. It's excellent to see all this stuff being implemented. So the paint's in place now. Next step will be to put an undercoat on, maybe 2 layers of undercoat to hide the black, and then whatever finishing color needs to go over the top. So thank you very much for joining me. I hope you found it educational, and I look forward to bringing you back here when it's all finished.
So you just grab and hold this, and you are walking through your apartment. It's not possible. Yeah, this has to come down. Then you start shielding. Then we do the same again. Yeah. You're in the living room. These results. You're going into the bedroom.
So you left effectively the toxin-free foam, and then we use edible adhesive to keep the parts together.
So it doesn't emit xylene and benzene and all the
toxic
solvents that talk was about earlier, that people with memory foam advantages get sick.
Yeah. But there's also an increasing amount of people that ring up and say, you don't have Wi-Fi, do you? They're hoping for a negative answer. So we've shielded a hotel in Paris. We've recently done a hotel in Austria over there. It's a business hotel, so there's Wi-Fi for most people that want it. But there's they call it the geovital room, completely shielded. The wiring is taken care of for the high frequency radiation. and giving people an ability to enjoy a really, truly good night's sleep. And there's magazines like where this came out of, Trend, Global Trend, I think it's called, that report on these things. So it's quite a lot of things are happening. Welcome. Here we are on the building site with Next Gen Living, and we're going to be applying some shielding today. Just make sure that those involved know exactly how to apply everything and everything goes perfect. Okay, here we are on the top at the penthouse, and of course the higher we are, the more of the view we've got of the surrounding area and the mobile phone towers. So the situation here is of course very, very different. Okay, the next step is to put the grounding tape in place. Now, this particular bedroom is nice and straightforward. We're going to start in that corner over there, on the side where the door is, go all the way around to this side, inside the robe. Okay, so here we've got the grounding tape running down the bottom of the wall, showing a little intersection here, going up. Now you want that tape ideally to be a little bit off-center. Strong Build Company is going to be building another gorgeous house, and we're just going to take some high frequency measurements and check out the nearby power cable to see if there's any radiation issues to be concerned about, as in the placement of the house, and also if shielding is required. Building a house that doesn't just suit the lifestyle but also supports health instead of working against it makes a lot of sense, and it's a little bit like brushing your teeth, it's preventative as well. So wonderful that this is taken serious in this build, and hope you'll get us involved on your project.